Nepal and India go back a very long way, longer than modern maps, borders, or constitutions. The two are bound by centuries of shared culture, religion, and trade. Once upon a time, Nepal even carried the title of the world's only Hindu state. That title disappeared in 2006, replaced by Secular Republic, a change born out of yet another of Nepal's endless political revolutions. Because in Nepal, revolutions are routine. Protests, uprisings, governments collapsing, again and again. At the center of all this turbulence lies the same unsolved equation: a struggling economy, low income, youth unemployment, villages cut off by impossible mountains, 1/5 of the population living in poverty, and a country so dependent on foreign remittances that many households survive only because family members work abroad. Once, Nepal had a different role: middleman. It made money channeling trade between India and Tibet. But that collapsed when the British built railways and later when China sealed Tibet off. What remained was isolation, weak institutions, corruption, and an unhealthy reliance on foreign aid. From outside, things didn't get easier. India has leaned on blockades when displeased. India and China both flood Nepal with goods, leaving a huge trade deficit. And so, Nepal today finds itself poor, frustrated, and perpetually discontent. And yet, as the cultural elder sibling, you might expect India to provide relief, stability, maybe even leadership. But that expectation crashes into geopolitics. Nepal sits between two giants, India and China, whose relationship is defined not by trust but by suspicion. Chinese projects bring money to Nepal but often use their own workers and systems, giving little benefit to Nepalis, while India is perceived to be arrogant and high-handed in its dealings with the Himalayan country. It is safe to say that Nepal's woes are going to end only when India and China start getting along with each other. But why don't they get along? For China, the mistrust of India isn't just modern. It reaches back to the 19th century, to the Opium Wars, the start of China's century of humiliation. Much of the opium that ravaged Chinese society was grown in British India. So in China's memory, India isn't just a neighbor. It's part of the machinery that forced humiliation on their empire. Fast forward, China invades Tibet in 1950. Suddenly, Nepal loses its buffer state. India steps in, backing Nepal's monarchy. But that heavy involvement creates resentment. Leaders in Kathmandu begin hedging, leaning on India for security, flirting with China for balance. Then comes 1962, the Sino-Indian War. India loses, badly. In Nepal's eyes, India's credibility collapses, while China starts to look like an alternative. By the 1970s, India's assertiveness, shown most clearly during the Bangladesh War, alarms Nepal. King Birendra even proposes turning Nepal into a zone of peace, meaning to shift Nepal away from India's security umbrella. India says no. Instead, when Nepal dares to buy arms from China in 1989, India answers with a blockade. Food and fuel shortages devastate Nepal's economy. Anti-Indian nationalism rises. The monarchy falls in 2008. Maoists rise. China quickly adapts, building ties with the new power brokers. Prime Minister Prachanda even makes his first foreign visit not to India but to China. New Delhi fumes. By 2015, India again resorts to an unofficial blockade after Nepal passes a constitution that marginalizes the people of the Terai belt bordering India. Nationalism spikes, this time openly anti-India. Nepal signs new deals with China. India loses credibility as a nosy neighbor. By 2020, the rivalry fully engulfs Nepal. A border dispute with India overlaps with bloody clashes between Indian and Chinese troops in Galwan Valley. Nepal issues a new map challenging India. China begins mediating between Nepali political factions. Behavior Nepalis recognize as the new India. Meanwhile, India tries a quieter approach: connectivity, cooperation, less micromanagement. But distrust remains. In all of this, it is important to mention the looming shadow of the elephant in the room, the United States of America, whose growing interference in the region coincides with the rise of China as the next global superpower. As with every other country it sets its eyes on, the American establishment has been trying to manipulate public opinion in Nepal to push the country towards mayhem, so that America may install a US-friendly regime in the proximity of its greatest rival, China. So, where does this leave Nepal? Stuck, pulled between two powers, distrusting both, dependent on both. Its future prosperity depends on something that feels nearly impossible: India and China trusting each other. However, India's democratic setup, inefficient, corrupt, myopic, and afflicted by policy paralysis of the worst kind, is a serious impediment to making progress with China. India's civilizational resurgence is a pipe dream if it does not shun its colonial baggage and deep-rooted Eurocentrism, which have sullied its image among its neighbors and prevented it from pulling its geopolitical weight. Will the 21st century see India rising to the occasion and ending the misery of its ancient cousin, Nepal?